Welcome to Bike Social, welcome to the British Superbikes, and we're here at Oulton Park, which is notoriously difficult to set a bike up for. Now Oulton's got lots of positive and negative camber and huge undulations. Now those undulations cause real problems for the riders and the team, because as the rider hits the power, you go over the undulation and the bike wheelies. Now the wheelies look great and are very cool, but they don't count for fast lap times. And Oulton Park is a nightmare because the bike is always trying to wheelie. So how do we control a wheelie? Well, the obvious and easiest one is to roll the throttle. This is Danny's FS3 Kawasaki, so if he rolls the throttle, the front wheel will come back down and then he can accelerate. But every time he closes the throttle, he loses momentum and he loses pressure seconds, which means he goes further back on the grid. Because this is British Superbikes, we don't have any traction control. So putting any rider aids or anything like that can't work. So we have to look at setup and chassis. Now one of the things we can do to reduce wheelies is to extend the wheelbase and to extend the swinging arm. So if you've ever seen those crazy kind of Dutch and Europeans doing huge hill climbs, the back wheel is somewhere near where that barrier is. So if you can imagine that we take the back wheel and we extend it, the bike won't wheelie as much, but then with a huge long wheelbase and a huge swinging arm, it won't steer. Because you've essentially turned a speedboat into an oil tanker. And if you can imagine, the longer the wheelbase, the slower the steering. So let's pull the wheel back to where it is and look at other ways of controlling the wheelie. Obviously, we can put weight on the front. By that, what we can do is move the rider physically forward. One way to do that is put a backstop on here. This is the kind of seat that Danny rides, but we could space this further. But what we don't want to do is get Danny or any other rider moving around too much, because then he gets physically tired. But generally here at Oulton Park, the rider does have to move a huge amount to control the wheelies, to get his weight over the front and to keep that front wheel on the ground so he can keep the throttle open to reduce those lap times. Another way to control the wheelie is gearing and fueling. So if we know, for example, that when you come over Hilltop Rise it is going to be third or fourth, we can maybe change the gearing so the rider changes gear as he comes over the rise to reduce the wheelie. All the time the teams are working on this just to control wheelies and to reduce the lap time. One of the big things that Danny uses, and a lot of riders here at BSB, because remember we don't have any rider aids, is a thumb back brake or a conventional back brake. Now the thumb back brake isn't used for conventional braking. So when you go into a corner, you apply the front brake, you close the throttle, but you rarely touch the back brake. The back brake is for controlling the wheelies, and it's simply done by pressing as hard as you can. So Danny can have 100% throttle, apply the back brake as he goes over the crest. As soon as the bike's leveled off the crest, off the back brake and gain momentum. This means you don't have to close the throttle and he can balance the wheelie just on the back brake. Each team has got a different way of working it out, and each bike is completely different how it's set up. If the bike is quite short and is quite torquey, then it'll wheelie a little bit more. If the wheelbase is longer and the power is lazy, it'll wheelie a little bit less. Ducati have a little trick up their sleeves because they've got the winglets, which cause downforce. Now the downforce pushes the bike down and reduces the wheelies. But it's not as simple as that. In the same way, an aeroplane can't take off at 10 miles an hour. And the wings only work when the bike's going at 70, 80 and maybe a bit more. And most of the wheelies are caused in first and second gear when you're below 50 miles an hour. So off the line, for example, the winglets really don't do anything because you're not going fast enough. But again, once you get above 100 miles an hour, those winglets do work. The fast corners, the winglets work even better because they're pushing weight on the front, which means you won't get the understeer and it's forcing the front into the ground. We haven't got the exact data because Ducati won't let us have the data, so we don't know exactly how much force is applied and when it's applied. But it's just an intriguing aspect of Oulton Park, and it throws up all these kind of problems because we need to control the wheelie, but we don't want to reduce the power, and we don't want to apply too much back brake, and we don't want to close the throttle. So we can do it by setup, by extending the swinging arm, but then we slow down the steering. And all the time the team are just working around these questions and answers, and the rider is giving feedback to the team and backwards and forwards. And it's one of those amazing bits of track. It throws up this conundrum for every team and every rider, and it's how each team works out and gets around these problems of Oulton Park.